Hi, good morning, all of you. Let me welcome you all to the panel discussion on digital transformation and growth strategies in the era of the new normal. A normal which has completely changed the way we look at the world, not only at a philosophical level, but also at the physical level, where trends such as work from home, Zooming, social distancing have already become a common phrase. But there is also a little paradigm shift within this entire shift, where now we are talking about trends such as contactless dining, appointment based business models, which are supporting transactions and exchange in the physical world as well. As there has been an increase in e commerce sales and online deliveries, but also at the same time, there is a demand to open things up in the physical world as well. This is very well exemplified by Dutch PM Mark Rutte, who said that we are going to be a 1.5-meter society, but the life will continue to move on. So today we have audiences joining us from all over the world, different continents as well. So without further ado, let me introduce the panel. So we have a very diverse and interesting panel joining us from three different continents and four different industries to mainly talk about what digital transformation is, or was, how it has changed, what are the biggest impacts their industry is facing as of now, how the consumer behavior is changing, and what are the possible future solutions. So we have Taco joining us from Amsterdam, who brings over 30 plus years of experience in digital transformation in different industries. We have Renzo joining us from Peru. He brings the experience from Latin America and also from the learning industry. And then we have Ritesh, who is joining us from Minneapolis. He's the global head for commercial payers at Wipro, and he brings the technology perspective in the discussion. And finally, we have Gautam, who is joining us from Atlanta, works at UPS in the global e-commerce strategy team, a sector which has seen a lot of impact in these times. So it will be great to hear his views as well. So I'm personally very excited to hear their views and learn a lot from them. So we will have a 45-minute discussion followed by 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A. During the discussion, you can type your questions in the chat. And if you have specific questions to any person, you can also mention the name of the person in the bracket, right? So let me start with Taco. Taco, you can start with a brief introduction and tell us more about what digital transformation has meant to you in your industry and how it has been changing in these times.
Yeah, okay. We had a small introduction. Well, thank you very much for having me this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to many interesting learnings and discussions. My name is Taco Nieuwenhuijsen. I'm the founder and managing director of Encompass Marketing Solutions. Our main focal point is actually to grow customer centricity in organizations for better customer journeys, amongst which, of course, digital customer journeys. I won't talk too much about the past, so to say, because the disruption that is taking place at this moment is so tremendous that, you know, the past will be completely redesigned, at least in the coming years, so to say. And most probably, the disruption will be structural. And there are three things that I observed over the last couple of weeks or months. Firstly, of course, we have many new online users, people that were limited in terms of digital usage and now started new product groups and new types of services. Secondly, and that's something I heard, and you most probably as well, a lot of organizations that thought that their level of digitization was pretty high discovered actually that they are not so well organized. Now, you know, everything is
I think we lost
ourselves.
Oops.
That's good.
Was I gone?
Yeah, for a few seconds, but it's okay.
I was gone. Okay, and that is the new reality of the 1.5 or 2 meter social distancing, and at the same time trying as an offline business, of course, to optimize your revenues. So that are three main observations that I've made over the past couple of weeks.
Okay. Yeah. So Renzo, building upon Taco's point, he's talking about the three main things, and given that you are in the learning industry, one industry which has actually been positively affected by this particular change. So, what's your view about the digital transformation which was happening before and now? What is happening now? What are the biggest changes?
Yeah, so I'll be careful not to extend my participation. Thank you very much for inviting me. I've most of my career has been in either technology or education, and now I'm happy to be combining both in this role. So I lead the Latin American operation for Cengage. National Geographic Learning is one of our main brands, and we're trying to make education fun and engaging. That's our objective. So in that process, obviously, I've seen so many leaders for educational companies like jump and be happy about the prospects of using data, of using technology to interact with the students, of obviously transforming the education into the or moving to the online. The problem I think we've had in the past in these specific industries, like people kind of got it, but then was probably waiting for something to happen that really triggers the change, and it just happened. And the problem is similar to what Taco was referring, is that they weren't prepared. So most of them deal with the issue of basic infrastructure. Like, I don't have the systems that connect to each other. My data here doesn't speak to this data here. So how come I could create an online environment or an online class, for example, that really gives value to the student? I mean, you can do Zoom, you can do the basic interaction with the student, no problem. But then the student is not going to stay for that model. Student wants interaction. Student wants instant feedback. Student wants an experience that more or less is similar to the one that he had in the physical world. So we are facing that right now, and I think the first part of it, the first process of it, is how do we make sure we have the right infrastructure, that we analyze the data, that we have those bases so that you can build on top of it. I mean, I can talk more about the possibilities, but that's what I'm seeing right now.
Good to know. So I think one point which I could make from both of you, Taco and Renzo, is that some of the companies thought that they were prepared, but actually were not prepared. So let me bring the mic to Ritesh and ask you this question: that how well you were prepared, because what I've heard that Wipro has been recognized as a leader in the healthcare delivery. You're also managing one of the biggest healthcare IT program in India as well. So you've already been very active in this phase. So how this thing has affected you, and what changes you're foreseeing?
No, thank you, Abhishek. I can just say that we are living in a different world. I wouldn't say it's a new normal. We haven't reached a new normal yet. So thank you all. My name is Ritesh Mangal. I head healthcare commercial payers for Wipro globally, and it has really disrupted. I can tell you, for when this COVID-19 hit us for 6 weeks, it was a tsunami for us. The reason being, as Abhishek talked about, that being prepared, we were far away from being prepared. The regulatory norms that we live in, where we kind of support the frontline providers or payers who kind of in turn kind of take care of the patients. We weren't allowed to work from home, let alone work from Wipro premises. We have to be in a place where its security so high that we are not allowed pen, paper, and camera phones, where our operators process claims, authenticate a lot of the requests that's coming from providers, provide nursing services to patients. So it's such an environment. And imagine a workforce of 5,500 people that I manage. It's kind of moved to home in a span of 3 weeks. Otherwise, there is a huge disruption. So now we have understand that digital transformation is no more a transformation. It's a business as usual. You have to get there no matter what. There is no transformation or kind of big gig strategy over there. You have to make it happen today, or would have been yesterday. So that's the kind of discussion that we have seen. What we are seeing in the market from market perspective is that all payer providers, pharma companies. Now it's imminent for them that they get used to this normal in terms of trying the payer companies having to provide remote health monitoring. The teledoc is becoming a major play. You have seen significantly where a pandemic like this can really impact, where you cannot even go to a physician, even though you are critically ill. You are being asked to kind of wait for a significant amount of time, and you're not being provided care. So the teledocs, the remote monitoring kind of comes in handy, where we are talking about contactless environment. So the fear psychosis has been high in terms of what's going to happen in future. The one last point I would like to make is, from our perspective, the change is home is becoming a central place. Home is your gymnasium, home is your office, home is your care setting environment. So home is playing a very important role, and more of the digital transformation that you are going to see in future is going to be surrounded to humans and your home. So yeah, that's it's a new normal that we have to achieve. I don't know when it will be, 6 months, 1 year down the line, but it's a different world. Definitely we live in today.
Good to know. And so, Gautam, coming over to you, we have been discussing in the past as well, and UPS has already been so active in terms of digitally transforming their processes. This is not something which they are taking as a response to this situation, but they have already been active. So, what are your observations regarding this particular trend in your industry?
Abhishek, thank you for having me in the company of the esteemed panelists and all your guests in the event today. I appreciate the opportunity, and this is also a good opportunity for me to tell you more about the logistics industry in general. So usually people don't think of logistics as a sexy business, right? It's moving packages or stuff from one place to the other. But let me tell you a little bit about the scale of how UPS works. We process over 21 million packages a day around the world. That means over 5.2 billion packages around the world on an annual basis. We connect 220 countries and territories around the world. So this is the foundation for us to have already been investing a lot in digital transformation within the company. So this is the first aspect of it, which is the internal aspect, that we have to continuously transform, apply new solutions for being able to manage the scale. And the objective is to make growth and manage the growth more efficiently by every passing day. So the other aspect is the customer aspect. So who is UPS's customer? If you all are customers of certain sellers, of certain companies, you are the customers of our customers. So whether it's a business who's buying, whether it's a consumer who's buying from other businesses, they are the customers of our customers, who are these sellers or shippers, if you may want to call them. So for us, it is very important that we become a propelling engine for these shippers or these sellers to grow. And therefore, UPS has always been investing in new digital transformative ideas and solutions, of which e-commerce is a part, of which our applications like My Choice for Business and My Choice for Home are a part. Our technology APIs that integrate with a lot of these sellers and help them make certain solutions which will help them grow their business, ship more volume, and when the customer wins, UPS wins.
Yeah. So talking about, please continue.
Yeah, hopefully I've been able to present a little bit more idea, and you think logistics is sexy now.
Yeah, we're in love with UPS now.
Yeah.
No, definitely. I mean, given that e-commerce market is increasing a lot, so at least on that part, UPS must be very active. So talking about the customer centricity, which Taco also briefly mentioned, one important trend which we see here is the change in the consumer behavior. Like for example, Taco, you and me, we're already living in Netherlands, where the philosophy is more of self-regulation, more decentralization, letting people make their choices. But at the same time, you want to have a scenario where your health hazards are minimized. So in this scenario, how do you see the consumer behavior is changing? So what are your observations? Possibly you can share some local updates as well.
Yeah, well, these are global things. Before the session started, I I spoke about the research that we did in Romania, a completely different country, but we see globally the same trends. Smartphones are not so popular anymore as a search item in Google search. Everyone is seeking now for laptops suddenly and PCs. And that's a global thing. That is really something of the last 2 months where for the first time laptops are more popular. So that shows also the changing behavior short term of so many people actually. But what you will see is that when we talk about companies like UPS and the global ones that are, well, more mature when it comes to, of course, digital transformation, we have to keep in mind that that is only about 5% of all companies globally. The multinationals, the big ones that have made the investments, that went already 15 years through digital transformations and so on. The airline industry that, well, where I've been working for many years, but 85, 90% of organizations in the world, their digitization levels are not that high. And even if they have e-commerce activity.
Oops. Okay, I think we lost him. Oh, he's back again, yeah.
Yeah, are you losing me? That's very awkward because, in the Netherlands, we are supposed to have, one of the best internet infrastructures in the world, but apparently not in my house.
I think a lot of people have joined us probably because of that, maybe. Okay, please continue. Yeah.
I don't know what it is. But what you will see is, and we have been talking about omni-channel distribution, omni-channel CRM. Yeah, for 10, 15 years we have been talking about it. But if you see in reality how little omni-channel digital customer journeys there are, that is extremely limited. Whether you talk about your bank, whether you talk about e-commerce retailers and so on. And I had a personal experience a couple of weeks ago. One of the leading e-commerce retailers in the Netherlands, they also have some shops around. And I went to one of their shops. Yeah. And I was expecting the same level of experience that I have with them online, which is really excellent. Service and everything is beautifully integrated. But offline, firstly, I had to wait outside for 25 minutes before I was allowed to go in. Then there were 2 customers in the whole shop and 8 employees. Yeah. Then they did not have the product that I was looking for. And then finally, I could not pay cash. I had to pay digital while my supermarket allows me to pay cash. So that is just one of the issues that so many companies and the majority of companies is going to face in, well, the coming months and most probably the coming years. My background is the airline industry. And, well, I don't have to tell you that the airline industry is really, well, suffering tremendously. You talk about revenue levels of 5% of the normal revenue levels that they have, still. And that will last for the coming years. But this will also start to apply to restaurants, to normal retail shops, etc., etc. Yeah, and that is something that needs to be managed, and that will only be possible. Of course, when you start making the offline journeys completely digital as well.
Definitely. So Renzo, I mean, building upon Taku's point, I think National Geographic Learning has been very, very active on this front. They have also offered free education material on COVID-19 as well. You're also a professor in multiple universities as well. So as far as the education industry is concerned, how do you see this whole journey changing from offline to completely online? So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's very exciting. One of the things and thanks Taco for that example of the laptop. Just triggered another example that I have. If you think about the education, universities, and now everybody's feeling the pain because you have the kids at home. So I'm touching some sensitive nerves now. But if you think about education, like higher education, universities don't have really good data about their customers, which are the students. Like you have grades, that's it, right? And you have attendance, you have some level of usage of resources, but that's it. If your customer is your student, you should know how he learns. What's the best way for him to learn math or to understand a topic or to get him engaged? And that level of knowledge, most universities and most of schools don't have. So what this transformation is forcing higher ed institutions is to look at, okay, well, looks like I don't know enough about my student. So if I don't know enough about my student, how come am I able to know if he's going to stay, if he's going to go to another university, if he's going to take a gap year? If it's better for him to read from a book or learn an online lesson? If it's online, do I have to think of micro-learning and give him capsules of knowledge, or do I have to think about to build a more like an infrastructure around how do I deliver online as much similar as I can from the face-to-face environment? So I think talking about customer centricity and customer focus, that will online learning, and it won't replace totally face-to-face for sure, but that's the possibility that online has, that you will get by interacting with the student via online with the right tools, you will get finally to understand how he learns. And that's something we haven't been able to do for the whole history of education.
Yeah, definitely. And given, my experience as well in the online learning, there were early adopters as well who already started creating these online platforms even before the COVID times. And these are the people who have the right processes in place. And one more challenge with online learning is, also security issues. People have raised questions about Zoom security. And I think the security issue really applies to Ritesh's industry as well, because we were again discussing some time back, Ritesh, that your customers are payers basically, so how does the whole security issue comes into the picture, given that now the data might have to be taken out of their servers or out of their locations?
Yeah, but we'll get used to it, right? We're starting, we normally think about these changes of industry, and then we say, well, what's going to happen with face-to-face? Like, what's going to happen with interaction? So as many other industries, and as Taco was referring to his example, we won't move totally from face-to-face. We'll just gradually move parts of the education experience to online. So that will allow you to improve while you do it.
Definitely. So building on that point, Ritesh, the one of the security issues which your customers might be facing, can we please have your observation on that?
No, it's a nightmare situation when it comes to security. While there is a lot of investment that has been made in terms of how you can secure platform from a lot of cyber attacks, but now you are getting into, as I said, a different world where, just to give an example, contact centers. Now you don't have any contact centers running out of offices; they are running out of homes. Now what it means is that you have a clean room policy. Clean room policy at office means you have no pen, paper, or a video. Now you get into a home setting where the advocates or the agents taking calls, trying to process some of the claims or some of the request that's coming from provider in terms of emergency calls that needs to be taken care of. Now here you're exposed to the entire data. The employee can view, write down, video some of the PHI information, which is in terms of the medication. And there's a huge industry out there that kind of goes towards fraud-based and abuse. So it's challenging. There are a lot of solutions that are being built in terms of how do you create eyes in the cloud. I would say the word I would use is to monitor the situation, to kind of allow more and more security. There are a lot of systems that are coming up where you cannot means you are in a environment completely monitor, and then there are privacy issues of employees. Now you cannot put a camera in the office of the employee and say, okay, look, we are watching you all the time. So these are the few basic concerns which are kind of hindrance to where we want to be and where we are today. So this gap is not that can be easily what do you call bridge. While there is a lot of work has been done, we have got a lot of solutions that we have put in place, a lot of monitoring that is taking place to understand how we operate in a blind environment, while the systems, the analytics can kind of bring that change. I'll just give you an example. We have put systems in place where we can identify whether the agent who is taking the call is actually the agent that we have deployed to take the call, and we identified those cases saying that, okay, no, it was the spouse or somebody else who was actually taking the call. So these are real scenarios, and these are the real challenges, and bridging this gap is a task by itself. So I'll just leave it over there with that example. It's going to be interesting.
Universities are facing the same issue with evaluation now, right? With assessment, they say, so am I evaluating the same? Is it you that is taking the math exam, or is it your brother that is 2 years ahead?
No, definitely. I can totally connect with that. Right now I'm in the phase of my exams are going to be in like 14 days, which I have to prepare. And one of the biggest question is, should I keep it open book or a closed book? But I mean, it has to be by default open book. And for us, there's no way of monitoring them, that whether people are doing it by themselves or not. So of course, these same things apply in the context of the employees as well. So Gautam, coming to you, what Ritesh mentioned is a very relevant issue, and given the large scale operations which UPS has, you might be facing similar issues. So how are your customers reacting? Like, what has been the biggest change in the consumer behavior for your aspect?
Yes. One of the major areas that we focus on is the small and medium businesses. Like Taco was earlier saying, also was that the large organizations, they will figure it out because they've been investing a lot in this area. But for small and medium businesses, for newer businesses, in the recent times, a lot of supply chain has been disrupted around the world, because their manufacturers might be facing issues, the distributors might be facing issues, and then how do they make sure that they are able to first of all create a demand and then meet that demand? Because in these times, businesses and consumers, they are not spending as much either, so there is going to be a trickle effect in the economy for that. So what the issue is, how do small and medium businesses come out of this? The solution, and this is only part of the solution, there are definitely multiple aspects to the entire value chain. The solution is that if we can have these small and medium businesses not invest as heavily in the assets, control their capital expenditures, yet give them the same kind of capabilities for them to be able to compete with some of the larger organizations, then that would make sense and help them come out of this situation a little better. So I'll give you specific examples. UPS rolled out a company last year called Where to Go. It's like the Airbnb of warehousing. So where is WARE2GO? And in this case, the small and medium businesses, they can go and get these kind of capabilities for warehousing and for fulfillment on a need to get basis, rather than owning a facility, rather than going and maintaining that facility. It is the suppliers and the buyers of this warehousing space are connected digitally, and Where to Go is just a digital company. It's a platform which connects the buyers and the suppliers of this warehousing space. Similarly, e-fulfillment is another solution. Yes, e-fulfillment, which connects the small and medium businesses to over 20 plus channels. So these are digital channels like Shopify, like Amazon, eBay, Magento, and that helps these businesses to be able to position their products to the end consumers. This is, mind you, in the B2C environment. So with that, they are able to generate that demand. And in the future, because of the speed that this whole thing has changed, I believe that the speed of the adoption of these digital capabilities are going to be very, very important for these SMBs to come out of the situation, or at least fight it out for now, and then in the future grow with time. So with e-fulfillment, it's a connection of digital and physical. You have the channel management, and then what UPS does is we are storing these SMBs products in our warehouses. As soon as the order comes in digitally, the product gets shipped out to the customer. So that's something which is a lot of a high level of automation, and this is what we need moving forward. We have other capabilities for marketing, for order processing from other websites, which is called marketplace shipping. The thing is, the rate of adoption is going to change. We are going to see a very fast pace of our customers adopting to similar products around the industry. It's not just UPS, but around the industry, whatever that they will see benefit from without having to invest the kind of capital expenditure and move forward. That's something that they're going to benefit a lot from.
Good to know, Gautam. And again, Taku, coming back to as Gautam rightly pointed out about marketing automation, and as we've already saw that e-commerce markets have increased. Even in my experience, some of the companies with whom I'm working with, their physical stores are completely closed in Netherlands, but their online sales have increased by 300%. But my question comes that on one side you have the online part, but what about the physical part? There is a demand for people to go out. Even in Netherlands, we are talking about opening the parks. Zomato from India is talking about contactless dining, where you can go to a restaurant, have this physical transaction without coming in touch with any other person. So what's your observation on this, and where do you think some of the solutions will come out for this particular aspect? To you, Taco. I think you need to unmute, Taco.
I just said you're right. I have to unmute. Yeah, that is not so simple, frankly speaking, because we all know that any business has needs a critical mass to reach profitability, has a break-even point, and it doesn't matter which type of business, and I think we're all reading a lot what's going on in the media and what the experiences are of different sectors. And yes, I'm focusing more on the B2C sectors than on the B2B sectors, frankly speaking. But especially in the B2C, whether you talk about hairdressers, restaurants, entertainment parks, they're all seeking for a model that is suitable in this social distancing new reality that we are going to face all around the world. Let's make that very clear. There's no country that will go within 4 or 5 months back to the way it was 6 months ago. At least I cannot imagine. Let me put it as such. I cannot imagine that is going to happen. So there are millions of businesses facing this issue of what we call, capacity constraints, so to say. That needs to be dealt with. And you see all kinds of creative, quick win solutions where people are going to say, you have to book up front, and then you get time slots, and we make sure that we have extra people. But these are all solutions, of course, that are good for the short term, but they won't last very long in the end, because it will be too costly, and you will never reach this critical capacity factor that you require to become profitable, so to say. And that is, of course, where you will have to seek for more intelligent solutions. And we discussed this before in the previous weeks, that likewise in the airline industry, which is very, capacity critical. In the airline industry, what we call critical load factors are about 90% of the total capacity. Everything under 90% is loss-making, so to say. And the airline industry started already 25 years ago with what we call revenue management, where we manage, so to say, capacity and yield. And that is also why we have very advanced pricing systems and so on in the airline industry. Yeah? And that's all based on capacity and expectations. And these are models that you will start seeing in the physical retailing world in the future as well. Because if you don't, then it's very simple. You're never going to become profitable. And many companies will not have, of course, because if we talk about these revenue management systems of the airlines, those systems cost tens to hundreds of millions of euros. They have so much intelligence in it. And sometimes in the past, there were teams of 200, 300 people managing all this capacity. And most probably in UPS, there are big teams that are managing revenue management. That's all. And it's very dynamic, of course, as well, because it changes per day. Yeah. And small companies will not have, of course, the budgets to make these type of investments. So there will be opportunities for platforms that offer groups of consumers on one hand and groups of suppliers on the other hand, models where people can interact with each other on the basis of real time. We're not talking about for an entertainment park. It is not so difficult to say, if you want to come tomorrow, these are the slots. You can book a slot if we have it for you. And then, you are with 200 people in the park instead of 2,000 people in the park, because that will happen, But for other types of businesses, like restaurants, like main street shops and so on, you depend much more on the audience that is in the vicinity. So you will get all kind of intelligence that is based on geospatial engineering and so on, where you book really slots and where you start to work with each other in a completely different way than we are used to. Now, okay, the doctor's appointments is, I think, a good example. I don't know how it is in other countries, but I know in the Middle East, at least, where I lived for 10 years, and here in Europe, you get a doctor's appointment for 15 minutes. Up front, you have to say what you want, and you can discuss one thing. And after 50 minutes, you're out again. Because, if the doctor doesn't keep this strict schedule, then, 3 hours later, people are sitting there for 1.5, 2 hours. Now, that are situations that we will start seeing in many more businesses in the near future.
Definitely. And coming to you, Ritesh, what are the steps, what are the new solutions which Wipro is thinking of, given that we see the changes in two ends, on one side, increase in the online demand for work from home solutions. On the other hand, we have also requirement for solutions, which can enable transactions in the physical world. So as far as Wipro is concerned, what has been your approach and what solutions you are looking at?
So if you look at from a Wipro perspective, we have invested very heavily in cloud, digital, and cybersecurity. And these are the areas where the market is moving. And now, as I said, it's no more a transformation. It is business as usual. So it will not be you're going to fund through capital projects. A lot of our customers is not thinking it is a capital. It's more of an operating expense they need to get to, especially with cloud. So it's going to become a new norm. So these are the areas where we will see a lot of growth from a pro perspective. One other area that's going to take off, given that a lot of security regulations have been questioned now, saying that, okay, earlier a project used to start with the cloud saying, okay, what securities you have in place? Now the questions will be, okay, why are you not moving to cloud? So the crowdsourcing platforms will become a big thing today when it comes to where as Gautam and Taco and Renzo was talking about, you need solutions immediate, small and medium segment. And even the large customers, they cannot move at the pace that they would move, keeping their own development teams or maybe a dedicated structure. So crowdsourcing will become a new normal in this the IT industry across, whether it's regulated or non-regulated. That will be one big area that we have invested, and we will see a significant growth in that space.
Definitely. And what about you, Gautam? We have seen so many impacts and some of the solutions coming out from Taco and possible business models from Ritesh as well. So give us an insight about UPS and what are the futuristic solutions you're looking at.
I cannot share some of those for confidentiality reasons.
You can lead us to them.
Yes. In my opinion, though, there is going to be a lot of partnerships coming up in the future, because a lot of different companies have very specific capabilities. And today, in this age of transformation, as usual, like Ritesh said, when these different capabilities come together, that's when new age solutions will become available. So, for that, these different organizations need to join hands and think of avenues for them to be able to bring end to end solutions to their customers, to joint customers. So that will be something very interesting in the future for us to watch and see where the industries head. Where because of this digitization, it becomes even more imperative for companies to partner, to join their hands and bring out new capabilities. And that's all I can tell you from a personal perspective at this point. But one such example I will give you is in the B2B world, and which Taco earlier mentioned about the B2C, but another substantial opportunity exists in the B2B world. So UPS has made investments in startups, in other companies, and one such investment was with a company called Inception. And that company brings B2B capabilities on the platform. It's a digital technology platform. UPS has integrated the shipping capabilities on that platform. And what it does is to help businesses able to grow with the help of their marketing capabilities, with their demand generation capabilities. And UPS fulfills the back end of all of this. So this was an example of the partnership, which is an end-to-end B2B e-commerce suite, which we might not see earlier, but which this partnership was announced around a year ago. But I believe in the future in the industry, there's going to be a lot more of this coming up. Now, B2C in the US is probably going to be around $600 billion of business by 2024. However, B2B is going to be 1.8 trillion with a CAGR of 10% year on year in the next 5 years. So there is a substantial opportunity for B2B. Of course, B2C is growing, and it has actually made the buyers of B2B also very conversant with their own style of buying. So it's the convenience, it's the simplicity. However, B2B is not simple. For example, in a B2C transaction, there are about 200 data elements, versus in a B2B transaction, there are 7,000 elements. So that's just about one transaction. So B2B is not simple. However, the expectations of customers are that it be as simple as a B2C transaction. That's where we need to move towards, which is the industry has to transform, has to partner, has to move forward in such a way that we make B2B as simple as B2C. So we'll see continuous overlap in the times to come, in the very near future, I believe.
Definitely, definitely. So Renzo, summarizing their point, Taco talked about, on-demand appointment-based systems for physical transactions. Ritesh talked about cloud going very heavy in their industry, and Gautam talked about the importance of B2B. Given that in the learning industry, it's also, it's in a way B2B and B2C at the same time, because you have the students on one hand, but you also have industry-wide collaborations with other providers. And on other hand, you have solutions like Lark and one solution from Alibaba as well coming into the picture, which are enabling this connection of people. So what's your observation about that? And specifically, if you can give us some examples from Latin America.
Yeah, for some people it's very difficult to compare. The education industry is always like it's a university there, but I manage an operation in Mexico City that has a P&L of $100 million. So it's a business as any other, right? So you have students. If students leave, if you give a scholarship, that's a discount. If students leave, that's your retention, your customer retention. So and that retention can be in the vicinity of 20 to 30%. So the education industry behaves as any other business. So think about the example Taco gave about compactation, or how many people can you fit in a plane, depending on so that's something where education has a lot of potential. If you think about the face-to-face traditional world with the situations that we'll have facing COVID. So I was talking to the dean of Holt, the Holt MBA in San Francisco the other day, and he was telling me, we have the students in a building. How are we going to do to get the students to the classrooms? in elevators. By the time they are there, the class is over. So think about that. Think about the potential of online, where you can have one teacher for 500 students if you do it well. If you do it or if you select the type of course. Think about the potential of blockchain to allow a student to choose where to study, what university, and think of a process which today it doesn't exist. You have to cry to do the validations from one university to the other. But think of the potential of taking one class here based on competencies, not based on the credits you need, and how you can become a professional from different universities with different skills, which, by the way, will be more and more demanded by this new normal. You don't need engineers that will get ready in 4 years. You need engineers that know the things you need now. And I think that is a main change that we're going to see in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point, because the idea that actually you can have multiple courses in multiple universities sitting at your home, I think that gives such a great added layer of diversity to the education as well. So, guys, we had a very good discussion about a lot of things. We talked the changes, the challenges, and possible solutions as well. And we have a lot of questions coming from our attendees as well. So we'll quickly move on to that. But before we move on to that, given your experience, given your understanding of the situation, I would like you to speculate and just look into the crystal ball, like the oracle of this metric series, and give us an insight or some speculation where this whole digital business models are moving. Anything you can think of, starting with Taco.
Well, on the downside, I'm afraid that many businesses that still have to start any level of digital transition are not going to make it. Unfortunately, unless they are so small and so lean that they can survive because they have no overheads or whatsoever. But any business, and that are many businesses today, from restaurants to small retailers, mid-sized retailers, and mind you, we always talk about e-commerce, but e-commerce overall in any given country is still not more than 10-15% of all revenues. We still live in an offline world.
Yep.
Still, don't forget that. And even if we talk about, that 20% more people have ordered food online or bought their groceries, it is still only a fraction of what we still buy offline. Yeah, so keep that in mind. So on the negative side, I'm afraid many are not going to make it. Yeah. On the other end, what you will see, those that are successful are able to implement omni-channel digital customer journeys, regardless where you are as a customer. It shouldn't matter whether you use social media, whether you use the website, an app, or whether you are in a physical environment. You should have the same type of digital relationship with any given provider, supplier, or whatever you want to call it, retailer. Yeah, that is the new norm. Also, although this situation hopefully will not last longer than 2-3 years, it will change the behavior of people. It will change the expectations of people. Yeah,
Definitely.
people will expect also in the future to have appointments, not to have to wait in line and things like that. So even though maybe the social distancing might hopefully disappear again, the mindset and the behavior of people will change. And that will bring fundamental changes to, well, whether it's education or whether it's healthcare or whether it is, well, our normal day-to-day, interactions with each other and with our suppliers. That is my idea.
Definitely. I think that's a very interesting point, because what you're saying essentially is that a short-term change in the behavior may have long-term consequences, such that possibly these scheduling platforms can be become the norm in the future as well, when we do not have to manage social distancing. So, what about you, Ritesh? If you have to look into the crystal ball and try to think of the long-term effects of this thing, what would be your speculation?
So I would say that there will always be anomalies as you move into future. But if you look at it, if I have to say, the business models would change. All the traditional business models that kind of existed on a premising that world wouldn't change would be out of business, as Taco was talking about. So the new business model would come. If I have to gaze into future and say, I would say hundreds of Amazons growing up or popping up in the next 5 years, and you will see a complete different alignment of industries, what we call consumer, healthcare, banking. I don't think they will remain as such the industries as consumer or banking separately. It will be amalgamation of all these industries, just focusing on one single person, which is the customer in the center. And what somebody like Renzo talked about, a very good point in terms of education. If you apply that as to how a kid would like to learn, is the most important part. The industry has been struggling to understand also how a customer would buy. There are a lot of models. So I think depending on the behavior of the customer, the industry is going to align itself, and most of these differences between the industries or verticals would go away as we move into future. So I'm hoping for hundreds of Amazons in next 5 years. Maybe Amazon could be the one from a financial might perspective, but you are going to see such models emerging, or I would say Uberization of Amazon in future. That's how it's going to work. That would be my crystal ball prediction.
Very nice, very nice. And what about you, Gautam?
To reinforce Taco's and Ritesh's point, I gave out a number earlier that close to 1 trillion is what the online B2B sales is here in the US. However, it's only around 9% of the total sales. So there is so much more offline that's going on. So that's the opportunity. We were forecasting that a lot. Okay, the business might shrink. I mean, we're not going to say tomorrow the world's going to be rosy and beautiful very soon again. No, it's going to be a tough time moving forward. And I believe all the professionals out there, they're going to do their best. So the overall business might shrink a little bit, but that 9%, I want to see that increases to 25% in the next 3 to 4 years. We won't project it to get there yet, but I believe the speed is going to be much faster of adoption of these new capabilities in the times to come, and the future is going to arrive earlier than expected.
Definitely. So,
Absolutely.
what about you, Renzo? You can quickly summarize, and then I have some really interesting questions
Yeah.
from the attendees.
Yeah. Very quickly, just on Gotham topic. Yeah, very, very interesting how we think about online, and we think like everybody's buying online, but we still have room of growth. I was just listening to a talk the other day about 20% of those Amazon purchases are done via a device, voice recognition device. So when that changes, then you have a world of opportunity that's going to increase, and that's going to become an opportunity for many different components of the industry. So I'll wear very briefly my hat of analytics professor, and I'll say that data is going to become probably more and more important and probably decisive for any business. If you look at the speed of the businesses right now, the banking industry, logistics, telco have moved more quickly because they have more data from the customers. And so that's going to become more and more relevant for small and medium businesses and for other industries that didn't have that mindset of getting understanding the data and playing with that data to relate with them. And I totally agree with my colleagues here that that will also generate more collaboration within industry. You don't have those barriers anymore.
Thank you, and thank you so much, guys. It was very, very insightful. Now we have a lot of nice questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose few questions. But my request to the attendees is that if you want to ask the question live, there is a very nice option of doing that on AirMeet. You can raise your hand, and I can invite you on the stage. It's like very analogous to inviting somebody on the stage in the physical world. So if anyone wants to do that, Please raise your hand and I'll give you the mic. Meanwhile, I have a very interesting question from Professor Claudia Maria Quintanilla. She's joining us from Mexico. So I think that's very suitable for Taco. So consumers are changing since they are comparing more attributes of products and services thanks to shopping online. More rationalization is happening in consumer decisions. So how does company customer journeys satisfy this new way of decision making? Does marketing people think in different stimuli? What type of different stimuli we can have? So yeah, maybe you can answer that.
That was a very long question with some statements as well in between.
It's coming from a professor.
Yeah, exactly. So complicated. Let me think. Yes, consumers nowadays, at least those that are becoming more online experienced, are considering in their buying process more, how can I say it, measurable components in their decision making. We know that in the end, every decision is always an emotional one. Although we try to rationalize everything and we put everything in algorithms and things like that. But to understand the real consumer behavior in the journeys, yes, we know that consumers in different customer life stages can follow 20, 30 different journeys, and we are still not able to capture all these different journeys that each individual customer can make. We try to capture them, and bit by bit we get more insights. However, to relate them and to build really strong, how can I say, mathematical paths of chances how to influence certain customers at what time is still for marketers a black box, frankly speaking. We always talk about artificial intelligence, and we're talking about using artificial intelligence and machine learning for behavioral segmentation. But when you talk about behavioral segmentation in the world of marketing, so to say, we always talk about past behavior that we are able to map, so to say. When it comes to psychographic segmentation, there's still no artificial intelligence model for that yet. That might take another 10, 15 years. I hope that answers a little bit the question, and if not, then ask me more of these questions.
Definitely, and we also have a social launch option. So if any one of you want to stay a little and talk to one of the panelists, we have a social launch option, so we can definitely have that conversation as well. So that's the whole point. So one more interesting question from Dushyant. It's about Gautam, and I think I found that question very interesting. He says that there is some anti-globalization sentiment which has become prevalent in many countries, and also is getting stronger and could lead to possible disruption in the supply chains. So what is your outlook in this particular trend? And how should product-based businesses plan and prepare in short term because of this anti-globalization sentiment which may be there?
It's a very good question and might arise in a lot of people's minds. But personally, I think it's a little too soon for us to come to that judgment. The world's been functioning over the last few decades in a way where the world was continuously becoming smaller. The supply chains were able to connect different geographies. And you see a manufacturer somewhere in Asia, and then the retailer somewhere in North America or South America. The geographies might change. That is for us to wait and watch, where things get manufactured and where things get distributed. But the interconnectivity is something that I believe is only going to get more complex. It's like a web from moving goods from one place to the other around the world. I'll give you an example. There was a lockdown in India which started early in the month of March, and we were reached out to by a supplier of COVID test kit materials here in the US, actually in Michigan. And they wanted to send the shipment to India. It was a complex shipment, and it was supposed to go in minus 20 degrees Celsius throughout. So by using dry ice, by making sure that there was a time limit, a window that this shipment had to be delivered, and it had to arrive in the right sort of condition, because otherwise, even if the shipment of the package reached India, it wouldn't make any sense, wouldn't come in handy. So UPS was successfully able to ship this. Of course, there were many hurdles that we had to overcome, and this was a project that I personally led in getting this customer to get these test case shipments to India. There was a lot of coordination required. Teams from US, teams from Louisville, where our world port is the headquarters of our airlines, teams from Dubai, which is the headquarters of the India region, the Izmir region to be more precise, and teams from India. All of these teams got together. It was a fantastic example of global teams working together to make sure that the product actually reached its destination. And let me tell you, it arrived in the right sort of condition. The customer was more than happy. They said that this is going to go a long way in developing test kits for India. And that company now has ICMR certification to develop test kits for the Indian population. And also here in the US, they are providing those test kit materials. So similarly, you saw that hydroxychloroquine was being brought into the US from India. So while there might be some stop in certain segments, the geographies, however, might change. There might be new demands that we don't know of yet. And therefore, I think the world's only become a more complex web of interconnectivity, especially with the digital interface between the users and actually the suppliers. So I believe that's where it's heading.
Nice, very well answered, Gautam. So, Ritesh, Vineet Singhal has one question for you. So, it's a very specific question. So, he says, within healthcare, do you see a difference in approaches? On one side, you have regulatory bodies. On the other hand, you have companies with commercial intent, and then you also have companies who are serving public health program. So, how does there is a difference in these approaches? And he also adds that most of the countries globally have regulatory bodies, commercial and public healthcare segments. So what's the difference between these three approaches according to you?
So if you look at from regulatory aspects, and this is more specific to US, most of the global world has got more either most of public healthcare. If you look at Europe, Asia is all about private come public. US is very unique in terms of how they differentiate between their public and commercial or the individuals who like to take care of their own insurance policies. So the regulators have realized that a lot of norms, be it in terms of drug development or be it in terms of the CMS providing regulatory norms as to how a patient should be treated in terms of whether you can use telemedicine. A commercial payer would be able to whether get a reimbursement for a telehealth appointment or not. So these norms we have seen changing even during the course of COVID-19, where they have allowed a lot of remote patient episodes being reimbursed, while it was on a path where it was getting there, but it kind of accelerated those paths. But the biggest thing I would see from would come from the drug FDA, where you would see that they will not be a big hurdle in terms of drug development. They are going to kind of deploy policies and procedures that will encourage that you get an antidote maybe for a COVID-19 now. And somebody was talking, I think Renzo was talking about, this is not just one incident, might come after 4 or 5 years, you might have another incident, and it might kind of bring back the memories as to how scared you were to go out. And even once such incident, whether it's true or not, if we can paralyze the world, the only option that's left with is you get out with medication or vaccines that can be developed and distributed. Maybe Gautam can help in terms of distribution to a larger population. And that's very important. Otherwise, we are going to live in a fear psychosis for a long time. And that's where the regulatory mindset is, as to see how we can enable these processes. Rather, till this time, they were like watchdogs. Okay, you can't do this. You have to follow this. Now they have to play a larger role in terms of, okay, how can we make this happen together? So that's the key. Otherwise, as I said, we will continue to live in a different world. and the different worlds are going to change every year.
Definitely. Okay, I think we can still spend 5 more minutes in getting some more questions. Already we have short over time, but we still have more than around 80 people still with us. So I think, given their interest, we can probably stay for 5 minutes more, if that's okay with everyone.
Just one more comment about what Ritesh said.
Yeah.
That's very interesting what happened in terms of data sensitivity, right? We were in some parts of the world protecting our data, our personal data, health data. And then suddenly, especially in some parts of the world, not in every part, but you had to, probably lower your sensitivity about providing the data and started sharing that data. I think that's going to change the world of health sciences, because now you're more willing to do it. That represents a risk, of course. But if you're more willing to give your physical data, under the skin data, then that's going to allow more institutions to get together to collaborate, because that's the only way we can get out of this mess. Like, if we really have all these data, all these processes together, then that's how you move out. So that's going to represent probably an opportunity for the future as well.
Definitely. So let me throw a couple of more questions, which I think all of you can answer. So one question which Akshay asked, I think it's a very nice question. What does the panel think about the consumer sentiment on data privacy post COVID-19? People were anyways unwilling to do it before, and I think it builds very well on your point as well,
Yeah.
Renzo, that how does their willingness to share sensitive data post this situation, given that we'll be collecting way more data about people now, if we go ahead with these kind of platforms which have appointment and scheduling. So what do you guys think in general? So that's one question about the privacy, and there's another very interesting, very open-ended question by Kanan. He says that, what will be the immediate business growth place or countries? US, Europe, Latin America, India, any other countries? So I think that's a very open-ended question. Probably we can answer these two, and then we can call it a day.
Yeah. I can just because I started the comment.
Yeah.
Very briefly, I think our ability to collect that data is going to definitely determine how we again succeed. I think we're not going to stop people going to Google and say, what do I take for these symptoms? That's not going to change. People will continue going and getting. Well, what that can change is the ability for the health science industry, the hospitals, to provide the right response, to provide the right treatment right there. So that's going to be it. There is a study about a survey that was done to 100 MIT students about what type of data they were willing to provide for a pizza lunch, and most of them are willing to provide everything. Like, they're willing to tell their lives for a pizza lunch. So we're also facing a new world of people that probably not in our age range, but that are willing really to share anything, because they have the belief that if they share that data, they're going to get more value out of it. So as long as that balance gives them more value, more things than the risk of actually sharing it, they'll continue sharing the data.
Definitely. And what about you guys?
Well, I think there is going to be a good balance between the relevant parties that the data needs to be shared with. People also enjoy the convenience of it. But at the same time, it becomes a nuisance when data is shared to the irrelevant parties. So that's where I see certain applications of technologies like blockchain coming in. And we've seen that application in some of our business use cases, where blockchain, and not just blockchain, but other similar technologies can come into play, where they help protect the data between the relevant parties, which is the consumer, and who's actually going to be processing the data to make things more convenient for the consumer. So that's where I think we'll see the advent of new capabilities.
Okay. And what about you, Taco?
It's a very, very complex subject. Firstly, it depends where you're asking this question. I know countries, and we have all been in countries where data privacy is worth not much, where the government I know countries. I've lived in countries where the government knows almost everything about you. Yeah, especially as an expat. You come there as an expat, and they take everything: your blood, your fingerprints, everything. They know everything about you and what you're doing. So you just surrender. In countries, of course, that are more democracies, so to say, there it are big topics, and there are a lot of people that are very hesitant to even share their browsing data, for instance. And there, I think, indeed, you will see a division between two groups. You have one group that says, as long as I benefit from it, you can know everything, as long as it adds value to my daily life, so to say. Yeah. And there will be a group that is very hesitant. And I think, what you will see is that these two groups are going to have different experiences, because it's that simple. If you talk about apps that are able to trace and track and to assist you with Corona and whatsoever, and you are not willing to share any data, and that's a discussion that we have now in the Netherlands about this app that is supposed to help us to, manage the registration, exactly, the tracking and things like that. So we get these type of discussions right now, and it's it becomes a national discussion in the Netherlands. Yeah, but there will be groups, of course, at a certain moment in time. And I'm a data guy. Yeah? Let's make that very clear. I managed frequent flyer programs already 25 years ago, and that is all data based, of course, and customer insight based, and so on. And if you talk about omni-channel customer relationship management, in order to do it in the right way, you have to connect all the bits and pieces in customer data platforms and so on. Till the moment that people are facing the negative aspects, the potential negative aspects of it, which might be, that certain employers or potential employers, obtain medical information that is not, working in your advantage. Yeah, then it's not so nice anymore. So these are things that people are considering, of course, and we should all consider. It also has to do, of course, with morality and with values and things like that. And in the end, but the question is, where is the end and when is the end? It will balance out, of course. Everything ends up in a balance. Whether that will take 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, I can't tell, frankly speaking.
Okay, thank you for your reviews. Ritesh, we can have your quick comment on this part, and then Gurinder wants to ask a question by being on the stage, so we can have his question, and I think that would be a good time to end the panel discussion as well. So please, Ritesh, go ahead.
Living in a country in US, the data privacy has costed, I would say, at least 2 to 3% of our GDP. It has resulted in a lot of issues in terms of where we cannot use data to diagnose certain kind of diseases, able to kind of get into faster medication, means drug development. So it's kind of created a lot of issues. And now with the advent of technologies that de-identification and others, I think this will lead to a positive change in terms of data being available in the format that it should be to help more patients and also the population health, the way it's being derived. But one thing I'll tell you, the data is out there, whether you like it or not. Your data is everywhere. Today, your phone carries the entire data, where you eat, where you have been, what you read, what you buy. Okay, the only place you can go in Himalayas, maybe you think that maybe you may have a private life. There are satellites who are tracking you. So no more, means we can have a revolution maybe in next 5 years saying that, okay, what should be the rules and regulations of what data should be shared, but it is out there. It is people are exploiting Google, Amazon, Facebook. They have been using it for years, and my friend Taco would know how the marketing industry has kind of leveraged it over years to kind of use the data for their marketing. So the data is out there. It's just the vulnerable sections of the society. How do you protect them? That's the key. And that's where I think we need a lot of protection, rather than the protection is being provided, maybe not to expose some of the income tax files of somebody not being shown public, which is like ridiculous. So
Yeah.
it has to change. It has to change for the betterment of society, where we need to more look at how do we protect the people who needs protected. Otherwise, the data is out there. It's just how you use it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think that answers the question on the data security. Lovely to have these different perspectives. So for the last question, let me invite Gurinder. I'm going to hand over the mic, so you're going to see him here, and he can ask his question now.
Yeah,
Hey,
hi.
Gurinder, how are you?
Hi, guys. Thank you very much for the session. And my question is very simple for Renzo, since you're in learning. Renzo, do you think there's a danger of extinction for traditional higher education, like university education, the big universities in the world? I know everybody has been trying to go online, but do you think this pandemic is going to make them disappear in the next few years, because students don't necessarily have to go to US or Europe, like I'm talking about students from India and China and all, and they can just access that information? So that's one thing, and that's going to have another impact on the economy as well. So your take on that, please.
That's a great question. Changes in education have been traditionally very slow. You think about the time it took when the press appeared, when you were able to print a book. The whole society complained because they said, "No, how come this is going to eliminate thought and creativity? Because we used to take notes in our papers from the teacher, listen to the paper, and give your own interpretation of what the teacher is saying. Now, if they're giving us the book, then what creativity can come out of that?" So it took 100 years for the printed industry to evolve. I think in education, and it is fortunate and unfortunate, changes will be gradual. So this is not going to probably end the traditional system. This is going to, unfortunately, put a lot more pressure to universities that are in the middle. So Ivy League universities won't have any issue. They will continue to operate. The problem is going to be for those that cost about $40K a year, and that will give you a salary maybe of $30K a year. So students are going to start doing the math, as they do it with marriage and other issues, and they're saying, so what's the likelihood I'm going to get out of this? What's the likelihood I'm going to get a job, a good job? So will this change the economy? Yes, will change the dynamics of the economy, because right now you have an employer that is desperate for talent, desperate for data scientists, for people in technology, for people in logistics with other skills. And universities are creating plans like 4 or 5 years before, and it takes a while for them to produce a topic. So some universities, like the best universities in Mexico, the best universities in the world, will probably continue to evolve that way, but there's going to be a lot of pressure to universities that are not able to see their return on investment, obviously, right?
Yeah, I think very, very relevant point. I think you made that about the mid-level universities. Those are the ones who might be, facing a little bit of trouble. But thank you so much for your all insights. And I think I wish this could continue, because I personally really enjoyed listening from you guys. So let me do a one bonus question as well, and just one word, one line question, nothing more than that. The question which I asked you earlier, that where is the next growth coming from? India, US, China, Europe, Africa? One word and why? Just to like a one line answer. We can start with Taco.
You can say the Netherlands. That's fine.
I think Africa.
Africa. Okay.
Yeah, I think Africa, because Africa has a lot of growth potential, and many economies are going to be hampered in the 4, 5, 6, 7 years to come, depending on how long the situation will continue, of course. So
Okay.
I would say Africa.
Okay. Gautam?
I'd say the world, the earth, because it has to be collaborative. No one in isolation is going to be able to drive that growth around the world. It has to be a joint effort, and various different geographies around the world are capable enough to drive the next wave of growth.
Okay. What about you, Ritesh?
I think Gautam didn't want to upset any of his customer across the globe, so it was taking a safe stand. I would say Asia and Africa next. Asia in the near future, and Africa has a long potential because of the natural resources and the vast land that they have in terms of and the population at being a per capita income which is very low. So as Gautam talked about, jokingly maybe I would say is it's all about the world